Today's episode, we have Alexandra Turcios, founder of Built in Detroit, management consultant at Accenture, and the co-marketing chair for the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement.
Tune in to learn Alexandra's tactical strategies on how to build your board of directors through identifying goals, honing in on your search, and refining the ask. Your success is our success, so let's get started.
From the heart of Silicon Valley in beautiful San Francisco, California, welcome to the SDR Live podcast with Marcos and Andy.
Awesome. Well, glad to be back on another episode of the SDR Live. Today we have Alexandra. Alexandra, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah. I mean, we're super excited because the way we actually found you and the way we connected was actually through kind of like networking on LinkedIn, which is kind of what the whole topic is today, which is finding mentors and networking. But for the audience, that doesn't know you, can you just start with a brief introduction and kind of where you work today?
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Alexandra Turcios. I'm a strategy and consulting analyst with Accenture and the founder of Built in Detroit, which is a small networking event company that bridges together individuals in the small business sector with corporate America. I am currently based out of Chicago, previously based out of Detroit, and I'm really excited to be here.
The Windy City, is that true? I've always wondered if that's like the true, if it is windy over there.
Well, it's funny because it is really windy in Chicago. We're right next to Lake Michigan, so we always get the draft from the lake coming through. But Windy City comes from the windy politics that surround the city and some of the policies that happened in the 90s with the Daley administration. So,
wow.
A little bit of history for you.
Yeah, a little bit of history there for you.
Always learning something new every day.
A double caveat to it.
Wow, that's great. And so obviously you're running Built in Detroit, and so it's really to help young professionals. And I'm sure one of the topics that always comes up is, Alexandra, how can I find a mentor? How can I network? So I think you've really taken a strategic approach on kind of how you've gone out and find your mentor. So I'm curious, maybe if we could just start off, what is a mentor to you, and kind of how do you see it? Is it like a two-way street?
Absolutely. I think that the mentor-mentee relationship is one that should inspire two-way dialogue. Not only can you get the knowledge from your mentor that you're seeking, but I think that there's a huge learning opportunity for your mentors to learn where they can fill in gaps, identify their own blind spots, and ideally you should feel comfortable having that dual feedback loop, if you will, and helping each other with your long-term and short-term goals. So definitely agree that it's a two-way street.
So that's interesting. And Andy, feel free to chime in. I think you had a thought there.
I did. My question was, I'll just jump right into it. As I'm on this process of finding a mentor, one of the first roadblocks that I have, a personal barrier for myself, I feel like I'm just taking and taking and taking from people's time. So I feel bad for even making the ask, because as a kid who was just only 24 and only been in the corporate America for 2 years, I don't feel like I have much value to add. How did you deal kind of with that mindset, or how did you overcome that mentality, et cetera?
Yes. So I completely understand where you're coming from. I'm a first generation college graduate, and I've gone through my bouts of imposter syndrome and feeling like I don't have anything of value to add, or just going back and forth of this space of, do I belong here? And am I taking time away from your valuable other priorities? But I think for me, I've had to really break down that misconception, because people generally want to help and they're interested in building the next generation of leaders. And I think reassessing the situation and taking it from switching your mindset from I'm taking time away from you to we're building a long-term relationship that we're both learning and growing from. It's not transactional. I would feel bad if, you intend to talk to this person one time and then they're out of your life. But viewing mentorship as a long-term, lifelong journey can kind of take away some of that imposter syndrome in my experience.
Awesome. Thank you. Definitely taking down notes right now.
Yeah. And I think it's totally normal too, to feel that you're kind of taking time away, because especially as a first generation student, like we're not used to asking for help. And there's this idea of accomplishing things on your own and taking accountability for yourself. And I think that's kind of normalized in capitalist society, where after you take a step back and you realize that no one gets anywhere alone, and that other people rely on their network and rely on the relationships they've built to accomplish their goals. And it takes some of that doubt and,
that's what we're seeing
feelings
too.
of bothering away.
Of course. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'll probably like the same exact as you. And we're actually, Andy and I are fortunate. We kind of got our break into tech, I guess you can say, via like Sales Academy. And I think you're doing the same thing with like the Built in Detroit, which is awesome. But maybe there's like somebody out there that's like, I don't even know where to start, right? Like, I might have some imposter syndrome, and like I want Marcos or Alexandra or Andy to be my mentor, but like, how do I even go about asking, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, they're probably busy, and then they don't think you're good enough. So I'm curious to see like how you went about that. I'm sure there's like some tactical strategy where you found somebody like in the space you want to go into, or kind of work in the future.
Definitely. I think the first step is doing some type of personal introspection on what are your goals and what do you want out of a mentor, a theoretical mentor that you're scoping out. Do you want to work on your communication style? Do you want to work on getting better at advocating for yourself? Or are you just looking to learn more about a subject that interests you and you want to connect to subject matter experts? So the first step is taking a look inward and identifying your goals for yourself. And then that's where it becomes easier to narrow down who you want to speak to and the people who are at the top of their field, so that you're not wasting their time and you're not wasting your own time in scoping out the best fit mentor relationship for yourself. After that, I think it becomes more clear the roadmap that you can take and focus on a specific part of your growth process that you want to focus on. And I can talk a little bit later about my 4-pronged approach about identifying the mentor DNA that you need to be on the lookout for. But to quickly touch upon that, you have to decide, do you want someone who will be a cultural ambassador for you? Are they a career counselor? Are they more focused on your mindset? Or do you need someone who will walk you through different communication styles and how to assert yourself in certain situations? So after you are able to put together a roadmap, then I think the ask becomes pretty simple, and you can treat it like a conversation like we're having now of, hey, I came across your profile. I really admire XYZ about you, and I'd love to set up time. And so it doesn't have to be an outward ask of, hey, will you be my mentor right away? Because you don't know the fit yet. So taking that time to introspect, put a plan together before you reach out to them, I think it saves a lot of time, and it just shows that you are taking initiative and come prepared, so that you have targeted questions to ask during that and see if it's a good fit and the vibe is there, because that's really important too. And I can talk a little bit more about vulnerability later on, but you need to find a good fit for both of you where you are willing to open up, be vulnerable about what you want to work on. And then, it should naturally evolve into a informal relationship where if the call goes well, hey, I really enjoyed our talk. Can we talk next week? And then you can keep it going that way. There are other times where I've outright had a conversation and then I'll reflect and be like, a few hours later, hey, I want you to be my mentor. Are you open to it? And most of the time, like I mentioned earlier, people want to genuinely help. So I've never heard no before, if that assures anyone. So you can only get a no if you don't ask, right? Like you never know what the answer is until you put yourself there and risk the ask.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yes, that's the quote. Michael Jackson said it best.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So I had a question there. So what are the, Andy is right about that one. But so this whole idea of the base being goals, right? And kind of how you go about like, you know, what do I want? And so something that I saw when I was trying to figure out kind of what I want is like starting with like why, Simon Sinek, right? That's a great YouTube video. But I'm curious, like, do you read any books that kind of helped you set up so you could goal set, or like how do you go about that?
There's one podcast in particular that really I can say is the catalyst for honestly everything from how my work efficiencies and taking risks and valuing time and making the most out of my time. And it's a TEDx or a TED Talk called Time Multiplication by Rory Vaden. And basically this idea is that you should treat time as something that compounds and can be multiplied so that you can maximize the time you have today so that you can enjoy time later on. And it's a way of getting your mindset out of a procrastination mode to kind of like a go, no excuses, don't wait until tomorrow if you can do something today type of thing. And so I think that's added a sense of urgency to what I do at work. It's added a sense of urgency to me building my network rapidly and mentors and not waiting for the perfect moment to ask, will you be my mentor? Or waiting for the perfect moment to reach out to someone. So that's one. And then on a philosophical level, I think the other book that was really formative to how I view the world is a book called Siddhartha, and by Hermann Hesse. It's great. It's really short too. And that just shaped my life philosophy completely because it talks about like man's purpose in this world, which you touched upon earlier, and kind of like, you know, finding mentors is truly tied back to finding your purpose, or at least starting the groundworks, laying the seeds for finding your larger purpose. And the sooner that you can take on that emotional work of learning your purpose and the goals that you want to achieve, the easier the pieces will fall together. You'll start to meet the people that can help you get to the next level, or whose connection would be really valuable in just teaching you a lesson or teaching you and physically mentoring. Like every situation kind of has its purpose. And I think that book in particular helped me realize the importance of every minute in life. So definitely. How about you guys? Are there any books that have shaped your perspective?
That's a great question. So I guess kind of my story when I was trying to figure out like what I wanted in my life was Man's Search for Meaning. Great book.
Yes,
Viktor
I've
Frankl.
heard of that one.
Oh, bad. You got to read it. But essentially it's, I'm going to butcher it, but it's essentially, so Viktor Frankl was, in the Holocaust, in the concentration camps. And what he started to see was those that stayed alive, that didn't give up hope, were the ones that had some type of like meaning to live, right? Whether that be like a vision for the future. Like in his case, it was like his wife. He wanted to see his wife, whether that's like in the afterlife or, he always thought like, once I get out, she's going to be there. So he kept thinking about that, and they put him through so much stuff, right? I mean, the guy's like emaciated and he's still working. He's like, I think they were saying that it would like rain once and like he started getting all these like nasty blisters and everything. But his mind was just so focused and goal oriented. And so ever since then, I said, you know what? Like what I want to do is I want to help others be successful. That's like my purpose in life. And then I read that book, which led to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it talks about how you be like values based. And instead of like, you can't be like money based, you can't be family based, you can't be, relationship based, because those will all eventually fail. What you can do is like have, 5 to 6 values that you carry in any situation you go to. That kind of led me to how I reached out to like my mentors. Because like for me, I don't like a mentor to me is a two-way approach, right? It's like I put in the work, but they also reciprocate that back. But I want to do good to the world, right? So if my mentor is not doing good to the world, then I'm like, why am I even like spending my time doing this? So those are 2 great books. But I'm curious, like on Andy's side, if he's had anything that's shaped how he's his life.
Yeah, before I share that, Marcus, you want to be my mentor? I'm inspired.
Of course. Happy to help anyway.
But good question. For me, that in the interest of time, like big fan of Tools of Titans. I've always wanted to be kind of a top performer, and one quote that's always just been resurfacing in my head is, to be a great, you have to study the great. And Timothy Ferriss does a great job of just giving you like bite-sized information on like what some advice and insights from like top performers in the field, and like in every field. And there's always parallels that you can draw to make yourself more successful. But kind of tying it back to finding a mentor and networking, etc. I do have a question regarding we spoke about identifying your goals first, and then you have to like find your searching for experts. I'm curious, like how broad and narrow are the goals that you set for yourself? And then I'm curious what steps you take to kind of find those experts. Like, are there specific strategies? Say that like I'm trying to become a better communicator, or maybe that is too broad. Like I'd love coaching on what steps I should take next.
Definitely. So I think everyone should have both short-term SMART goals that are measurable and time-bound and specific. And they should also have those longer-term goals, whether that's climbing the corporate ladder and getting to a certain position at your company or elsewhere. It's important to do that groundwork first. And then as far as the scope that I keep it, for me, it's like, what do I want to accomplish at Accenture specifically? And I have different areas that I target. So I might have a people impact area. I may have a social impact area, followed by client work and delivery, and also influence in the office and influencing my peers. So I break things down into also like bite-sized information that's easy for me to digest and also easy for me to communicate to my mentors or my what I like to call my like board of directors who are vouching for me and advocating for me on the job to help me get promoted. It just helps me categorize things so that I can effectively communicate what goals I've achieved and, create that business case for my progression at my company. But then I also have my other goals that are outside of Accenture, and they may be, things like I want to start my own company one day. And, that transcends what I'm doing now, but it's important to lay the groundwork early on and do the work to do trainings or connecting with entrepreneurs who have gone through it themselves. So I think everyone should have both sides of the equation. Keep it broad and keep it specific and time bound. And then to answer the second half of your question about how do I identify people who can help me on my career journey and personal journey. And for me, I think it's so important to start locally. So I used to go to a lot of networking events when, pre-COVID days when we could enjoy people's company. And
the times.
I know, right? And just sparking conversation with the person sitting next to me at an event. Hey, what do you do? And why do you like, why did you choose that field? What do you like about it? And, whether I'm getting food at the line, hey, how are you? Are you enjoying the event? Like simple human interaction like that goes a long way. And these people might not necessarily become mentors one day, but that's what building your network is about, is, talking to people, having them recognize your face and your name. And after a while, you start to realize how small the community is, and you start running into the same people at events and around town. Hey, I saw you at this event a few months back. I'm not sure if you remember me, but I'm Alexandra. We should get coffee. Just trying to create that human connection. And then another way of starting small is in your own office. So not only developing relationships within your own team, but in cross departments, so that you're building your influence at your own company. And, whether you're planning to stay there long term or short term, that's one thing no one can take away from you, is your relationships that you build. So that's why it's also important to keep a long-term view. It's kind of like, the saying that no one can take the knowledge or your education away. Same thing with your network. People can't take that away. That's something that you own and that you develop by yourself, with the help of other people, of course, but it's something that should be treated as a development area for yourself, right? And so starting small, starting local is super important. But let's say that you can't find anyone that fits the mold that you're looking for. LinkedIn is a great resource to use, and it really creates these boundaryless opportunities for you to connect with anyone from across the world. And I think there's this misconception that people don't want to be bothered on LinkedIn, and you might send out a cold email and not hear back. But I don't think that should stop you from doing having a warm lead to that person. Networks are small, and as you're looking to enter a new space, you might end up meeting that person in real life. It's important to break through those misconceptions, go for it anyway, because as we mentioned earlier, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And guess what? People aren't going to reply. They aren't. That's why it's important to, even if people aren't the ideal mentor or model for you locally or within your own team, everyone has something to offer that it's important to have standards and expectations, but to also be a little open-minded too with what people that are closest to you can offer. But definitely don't shy away from reaching out to people on LinkedIn. And the more you put out there, the more likely you'll hear back from someone who can potentially introduce you to someone else or start off a great relationship. So that's what I think.
This is definitely gold. Starting local is really interesting. I tend to go for international. But what I thought was interesting, and maybe you could shed some light on how you go about this. But all right, so you found a mentor, great. You probably had a first call. Usually those go well, right? People are, happy to reach out. Some will be, jerks and they won't do it. But say, for example, in this scenario, they say yes. How do you continue to show up to the meetings, deliver value? Specifically, say someone's higher up. I wouldn't say in society, but as maybe a VP of sales or someone you aspire to be. How do you maintain that relationship and show up for those check-ins?
Come prepared. Always have an agenda, even if it's a very high level agenda or sharing an experience where you need advice on. I think I'm a mentor myself as well as a mentee. And so, you can tell when someone's not prepared. Of course, yes. And they're just winging it, which is fine because you don't have to be on all the time. Accenture is a client-facing role, and that's exhausting. It doesn't always have to be I need to get something out of this conversation. It can just be, hey, I want to catch up with you because we're both human and want to say hi and have a conversation with you. But, in the early stages of developing that relationship, it is important to come prepared and have some targeted questions or things that you want to work on. So I alluded earlier to the mentor DNA model that I have. So I personally don't have just one mentor. I have various mentors in different spaces. And so the mentor DNA model goes into finding someone to help you with mindset. So this person should help you work through issues and work through situations where you can get a bigger picture perspective, as well as instilling healthy work habits, encouraging you to take PTO, encouraging you to take care of your mental well-being, however that looks for you. This person can also help walk you through things like imposter syndrome, or just feeling like any diversity and inclusion, or assimilating to the office culture type problems, helping you shift your frame of mind. So I have someone that I can call a mindset mentor in my life. I also have my career counselor. There's a formal career counselor that Accenture gives you, but I also have my separate career counselors that counsel me through different situations. And these are the people who advocate on your behalf. They give you high visibility projects. They walk you through how to progress and build your career, right? The third type of mentor that I have is a cultural ambassador. So this is someone who can relate to me on a cultural level. So I'm a first generation Latina American. So I have my mentors who come from the Latino heritage and have gone through what I've gone through, as far as, addressing the nuances of our identity, or acculturating to work, or bringing my full authentic self to meetings, which is becoming a huge topic nowadays. And then last but not least, I have my communications coach, as I like to refer to this final mentor. And this person I can talk to about, hey, I'm gearing up to have this call at work. How would you phrase this? Or someone asked me for feedback. How should I go about framing, wording? What type of language and verbiage should I be using here? And they also help teach you be more vulnerable in vocalizing what you need from your employer, from your team, from your peers, and having that sense of, I can walk into any situation and be able to maneuver it effectively. So I have 4 different mentors at all times that address each of these 4 areas that I walk through. And I think it ties back to knowing what your goals are. And I think everyone should have multiple mentors. One person can definitely do it all. I'm not saying they can't, but in my opinion, in my experience, someone who can specialize in each of these areas and hone in on those development areas, you're going to gain so much more, so much quicker.
That's something to note as well. We'll share this with the audience, this 4-pronged approach, but wow, usually for me, I just have I don't know. I never thought of it strategically like this, where I should have a cultural ambassador, right? I just never thought of it, but it just makes so much sense now as I think of it, because there are times it could be in the political state that we're in now, where you need to lean on someone that gets you, that's grew up very similar to you and has gone through that approach. Or even this idea of usually mine is just centered around career, but the mindset, I never thought of that. So yeah, I'm going to share this, but I had a question, and Andy, if you had any others, chime in, but now everything's virtual. So I'm just curious to see how do you go about this virtual, you can't really meet them in person now, right? They can't see your face. So do you just have Zoom meetings? And if so, how do you keep that interactive?
Definitely rely on Zoom or my company's Teams, phone. I think it's important to, it's important to see what COVID has changed, but also see the opportunity and advantages that this new setting allows all of us. I think that we're in a very unique space and in technology and in history where I think a lot of barriers can be broken down by doing things over Zoom, because you might be nervous on one end of the camera, but the other person will never know, and they won't be able to pick up on, different weird tics you might have, or, you might not have gotten ready one day and you're just like, hey, I'm not ready and I'm still in my PJs. So they don't need to know that, but you can just keep it really nonchalant. I've taken a lot of meetings in my PJs. It's more than I'd like to admit over the past couple months. But there's so many advantages to not being in person that I think we need to focus on rather than what we don't have because of the pandemic, if that makes sense. So my approach is pretty much the same. And I think it's easier because it's a little intimidating to talk to someone in person and then you're like, I want you to be my mentor and let's meet 3 times a week type of thing. But it becomes easier when you're just fully virtual. And I would say right now is the most opportune time to even start those conversations, because then when you meet in person, it'll, just fall into place a lot easier and the stress levels are lower.
Yeah, that makes sense. The PJs.
Oh yeah.
That's great though, because your mentor actually might be in PJs as well. So you guys could just have a PJ virtual
PJ coffee chat.
Coffee chat. There you go.
I love it.
So that's funny. So as we wrap up, we want to finish with a few, rapid fire questions. The first one is, do you love to win or do you hate to lose?
I love to win. Who doesn't?
Is there a why?
Okay, that's a tricky question though, because I'm not a sore loser because I view all my losses as wins because then I learned something out of them. The wins, I just love to celebrate them, small or big. So yeah, nice. I'm going to say my original response.
I love that. Next rapid fire question. It's, who are the 3 people who have been the most influential to you? Could be people, fictional, nonfiction, or people that you know personally.
I have 2 older sisters, so they take up the 2 slots. They've influenced me and molded me into the young woman that I am today. And they're always my sounding board. So I can always trust them and their opinion. And yeah, they're my rocks, right? And my mother, I'm going to group her into that just nice. Because, or she can be my second person for a second.
Love it.
She came to this country not knowing any English, started her own company, her own business. Now she's in real estate. Her and my father are both small business owners, and they've completely shaped and influenced my goals in this life and have given me a lot of opportunity that I wouldn't have dreamed of without their help. And then lastly, I think, I feel like there's so many micro interactions that have helped shape me, but I'm going to say my advisor from University of Illinois, my political science advisor, who he always encouraged me to go for things that I thought were out of reach, including a Fulbright fellowship that I just couldn't picture, someone like myself getting or being eligible for, but he always helped me stretch myself and believe in myself. So
those are some very inspirational people. Shout out to your parents, man, for absolutely living the American dream. Awesome. Well, our audience, they're somewhat new to the sales development, or they're looking to grow their career. And so I know this is going to be very valuable to them. Are you actively taking mentees? That's question number 1.
I am. So in addition to what I do at Accenture and built in Detroit, I launched a new career advice platform called Advice with Alex. And so I've been setting up 15 and 30-minute sessions with people to walk through specific areas of their career or personal journey that they'd like to get advice on. So you can sign up by finding it on LinkedIn. You can sign up on Calendly. Yes, reach out to me. I'm always open to talking to people.
It looks like Andy and I are both going to have to sign up ASAP. But also, say, for example, they want to go connect with you. What's the easiest way for them to reach out? Is that via LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll make sure that we put all of your links in our description. Andy, any other last questions before we finish?
No, just thank you once again. Like, you've obviously shared so many like nuggets of gold of insight, having the board of directors, starting locally, that like I'm going to take into my own networking approach. So I'm just excited to hit the ground running and start with these strategies. Thank you.
Yes.
Awesome. I'm very happy to hear that. And I hope that the message throughout this podcast resonated with you all and with the viewers. So thanks again for having me. It's been really fun.
Thanks, Alexandra.
Thanks, Alexandra.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the SDR Live podcast. If you like this episode, please share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you tune in next week and have a fantastic week.